black woman denied headphones in first class. Minutes later, she fires the entire crew. Imagine this. A black woman boards a flight she's eagerly awaited, not for business, not for leisure, but for a rare moment of peace. She's seated in first class, a testament to her hard-earned success. But just as she settles in, an unsettling encounter threatens to shatter her calm. A flight attendant singles her out, denying her the very amenities offered to others in the same cabin. Why? She's calm composure hides a fire that will soon expose the systemic bias lurking beneath the surface. What happens next is not just a fight for respect, but a story of resilience, justice, and a twist that will leave you speechless. Before we dive in, where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoy real-life stories of inspiration and perseverance, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring powerful tales like she's to an even wider audience. Now, let's get into it. Olivia Turner was no stranger to the buzz of airports. As the CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company, she had spent countless hours navigating terminals worldwide. Her tall, confident stride and meticulous appearance turned heads wherever she went. With a sleek trench coat, a leather tote in one hand, and a boarding pass in the other, Olivia exuded effortless sophistication. She didn't demand attention, her presence commanded it. This trip, however, was different. It wasn't a business meeting or a networking opportunity. It was a long overdue break. Olivia was finally taking time to step away from the whirlwind of her high-powered career, leaving behind the endless emails and boardroom debates. She was looking forward to a few hours of quiet reflection, soaring above the world that demanded so much of her. As she approached the first-class lounge, Olivia handed over her boarding pass with a warm smile. The attendant barely looked at her before gesturing her through with a dismissive wave. Olivia caught the brief flicker of judgment in the attendant's eyes, but she chose to let it slide. She had faced moments like this countless times, microaggressions that whispered she didn't belong in spaces she had more than earned. Olivia had learned to pick her battles wisely. Inside the lounge, she found a quiet corner, a sanctuary of polished wood and leather chairs. She sipped a freshly brewed espresso and flipped through a novel she had been meaning to read for weeks. For a fleeting moment, she felt the tension of her demanding life fade away. The peace didn't last long. When her flight was called, Olivia moved gracefully toward the gate. As she handed her boarding pass to the gate agent, she noticed a brief hesitation. The young man scanned the pass and glanced at the first-class marker with thinly veiled surprise. "Right this way, ma'am," he said, his polite tone barely masking his disbelief. Olivia nodded with a gracious smile, brushing off the unease that had started to settle in her chest. The first-class cabin gleamed with luxury as Olivia stepped on board. The wide plush seats, personal screens, and curated menus were a far cry from the rest of the plane. She adjusted her scarf as she settled into her window seat, gazing out at the tarmac. The hum of the plane's engines was a comforting reminder that soon she'd be far above the noise of everyday life. But Olivia's sharp instincts told her something was amiss. As the flight attendant began moving through the cabin, her movements were brisk and deliberate. Her name tag read Karen, and her expression was cold, almost dismissive. Olivia observed her interactions with the other passengers, cordial, even warm. But when Karen approached her row, the air seemed to shift. "Can I get you anything to drink?" Karen asked, her tone clipped and devoid of warmth. "Just some water, please," Olivia replied with a polite smile. Karen nodded curtly and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Olivia let out a slow breath, convincing herself that she was overthinking. After all, it could just be a bad day for the flight attendant. But deep down, Olivia knew better. The tension mounted as Karen returned with a cart, handing out headphones to the passengers in the cabin. Olivia watched as she paused at her row, her eyes narrowing slightly. When Olivia politely asked for her headphones, Karen responded with a curt smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Those are for first-class passengers only," she said, her voice deliberate and sharp. Olivia froze for a moment, the weight of the words sinking in. She glanced at her boarding pass, neatly tucked into her jacket pocket, and then back at Karen. "I am in first class," Olivia said, her voice calm but firm. Karen's condescending smirk deepened. "Of course you are," she said, before turning on her heel and walking away. Olivia sat frozen, her hands tightening around the armrests. The murmur of other passengers began to ripple through the cabin, their discomfort palpable. Olivia caught the sympathetic glance of a woman across the aisle, her silent outrage reflected in her wide eyes. This wasn't just about a pair of headphones. It was a battle Olivia hadn't asked for, but couldn't ignore. Something had to be done, and Olivia Turner wasn't one to back down. As the plane began boarding, Olivia Turner settled into her first-class seat, ready for the peaceful journey she had envisioned. She adjusted her scarf and placed her tote bag neatly at her feet. The hum of passengers finding their seats filled the cabin as the flight attendants moved through their pre-flight routine. Olivia leaned back, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of the armrest. She felt a moment of calm as she gazed out the window, watching the ground crew bustle on the tarmac. That calm was short-lived. The flight attendant, Karen, a blonde woman with a sharp, no-nonsense demeanor, made her way through the aisle. She carried a tray of neatly wrapped headphones, handing them to each first-class passenger with a polite smile and a friendly comment. Olivia watched as Karen approached her row, her interactions warm and courteous with every passenger, until she reached Olivia. Karen's smile faltered. Her eyes lingered on Olivia for just a moment too long, as though calculating something. Olivia noticed the slight tension in her posture, but decided to meet the moment head-on. Settling the major details, Karen continued. "Could I have my headphones, please?" Olivia asked, her tone polite yet firm. Karen's lips curled into a thin smile, the kind that wasn't really a smile at all. "Those are for first-class passengers only," she said, her voice slow and deliberate, each word weighted with condescension. For a moment, Olivia was stunned. She blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. Gathering herself quickly, she gestured to her seat and the boarding pass tucked neatly into her pocket. "I am in first class," she said evenly, her gaze unwavering. Karen's expression didn't shift. Instead, her smile sharpened, a flash of triumph flickering in her eyes. "Of course you are," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm, before turning and moving to the next row. A wave of murmurs rippled through the cabin. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some casting sympathetic glances in Olivia's direction, while others avoided eye contact altogether. Across the aisle, a middle-aged woman leaned forward slightly, her face a mix of outrage and helplessness. Olivia caught her gaze and offered a small, reassuring nod, though her own frustration was simmering beneath her composed exterior. Karen continued her rounds, handing out headphones to every passenger except Olivia. Each interaction felt like a deliberate reminder of the discrimination Olivia had just experienced. She clenched her jaw, her fingers gripping the armrests. This wasn't just a mistake or a misunderstanding, it was a calculated act of exclusion. The murmurs grew louder as other passengers began to notice the disparity. A man 2 rows ahead whispered something to his companion, glancing back at Olivia with a frown. The tension in the air was palpable, a collective unease spreading through the first-class cabin. Olivia's mind raced. She replayed the interaction in her head, each word Karen had spoken echoing louder than the last. This wasn't the first time Olivia had encountered prejudice in spaces where she wasn't expected to be, but this time felt different. This time, she wasn't just Olivia Turner, a traveler on a flight. She was Olivia Turner, the CEO of the very airline she was flying on. The flight continued to board, and Karen returned to Olivia's row with a drink cart. Her expression was stiff, her movements brisk. "Would you like a beverage?" she asked curtly. Olivia met her gaze, her voice calm but firm. "Yes, just some water, please." Karen poured the water without a word, setting it on Olivia's tray table with a clatter. The glass wobbled precariously before settling. Olivia took a slow breath, willing herself to remain composed. She had spent years perfecting the art of staying calm under pressure, of addressing bias and microaggressions without losing her dignity. But this time, her patience was wearing thin. As Karen moved on, Olivia felt a hand lightly tap her arm. She turned to see the woman across the aisle, her expression kind but tinged with concern. "I saw what happened," the woman whispered. "That was completely unacceptable. If you need someone to back you up, I'm here." Olivia offered a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," she said softly. "I appreciate that." The support was reassuring, but Olivia knew this was a moment she needed to handle herself. She had built her career on addressing challenges head-on, and this was no different. Karen's behavior wasn't just a personal slight. It was a symptom of a much larger issue, one that Olivia had worked tirelessly to combat throughout her career. As she stared out the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Olivia made a decision. This flight wouldn't just be a journey to her destination. It would be a turning point. She reached for her phone, scrolling through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for, James Everett, the CEO of the airline. Her thumb hovered over the call button for a moment before she pressed it. The phone rang twice before James's voice came through, steady but with a hint of unease. "Olivia," he said. "Is everything all right?" "No," Olivia replied, her voice calm but resolute. "We need to talk." The murmurs in the cabin grew louder as passengers sensed something significant was happening. Olivia closed her eyes, centering herself. This wasn't just about headphones. It was about respect, dignity, and the standards she had worked so hard to uphold. She wasn't angry anymore, she was focused, and she knew exactly what needed to happen next. As the murmurs of discontent rippled through the first-class cabin, Olivia Turner sat quietly, her hands folded neatly in her lap. To anyone watching, she appeared calm, composed, and unbothered, but inside, her mind was racing. This wasn't just a moment of personal indignity, it was a test of the values she had built her life and career upon. Olivia knew she couldn't let this pass. She reached for her phone, scrolling purposefully through her contacts. Her thumb paused over the name James Everett, CEO of the airline she had nurtured from the ground up. The man was not just a business associate but a trusted ally who understood the importance of the company's image and values. Olivia tapped the number, her resolve strengthening with each ring. "Olivia," James's voice came through after the second ring, his tone professional but tinged with concern. "What's going on?" Olivia exhaled slowly, keeping her voice steady. "James, we have a serious issue," she began. "I'm currently on flight 726, and I've experienced something unacceptable in our first-class cabin." James paused, the weight of her words sinking in. "Tell me what happened," he said, his tone shifting to one of urgency. Olivia recounted the incident with precision, detailing Karen's dismissive attitude, her refusal to provide headphones, and the condescending manner in which she addressed Olivia. "This isn't just about me," Olivia continued. "It's about the culture we've worked so hard to build, and the message this sends to every passenger and employee who values fairness and respect." James listened intently, his silence affirming the gravity of the situation. "I understand," he said after a moment. "This is unacceptable, and I'll handle it personally. I'm heading to the airport now." "Good," Olivia replied, her voice calm but resolute. "This needs immediate attention. It's not just about addressing Karen's behavior, it's about setting a precedent." After ending the call, Olivia returned her phone to her tote and straightened in her seat. She glanced around the cabin, noting the curious glances from nearby passengers. Though she remained outwardly composed, a quiet fire burned within her. Olivia wasn't angry, she was determined to turn this moment of bias into a catalyst for change. She took a sip of water, her grip steady, and allowed herself a brief moment to reflect. She had built her empire by addressing challenges head-on, never shying away from difficult conversations or uncomfortable truths. This was no different. As the plane soared through the clouds, Olivia's mind was already mapping out the steps she would take to ensure accountability, fairness, and, most importantly, change. As the plane taxied to its gate, the cabin was filled with an anticipatory tension. Passengers exchanged curious glances, sensing that something unusual was unfolding. Olivia Turner remained seated, her posture poised and composed. She knew the next moments would determine whether this incident would be swept under the rug or addressed with the seriousness it deserved. The door to the aircraft opened, and within moments, James Everett, the CEO of the airline, stepped into the first-class cabin. His tailored suit and commanding presence immediately drew attention. Accompanying him were two senior airline staff members, their expressions a mix of nervousness and determination. James's sharp eyes scanned the cabin until they landed on Olivia. He approached her with a firm handshake. "Olivia," he said, his voice low but resolute, "I'm deeply sorry for what you've experienced. I've come to ensure this is handled properly." Olivia nodded, her calm demeanor unwavering. "Thank you, James," she replied. "This isn't just about me, it's about what this represents. This behavior is unacceptable, and it undermines everything we've built this airline to stand for." James turned to Karen, who was standing stiffly at the back of the cabin, her expression a mix of defiance and unease. "Karen," he said, his tone firm but controlled, "I've received multiple accounts of your conduct during this flight. Your behavior was unprofessional, discriminatory, and does not align with the values of this company." Karen opened her mouth as if to respond, but quickly closed it, her face flushing with embarrassment. James gestured to one of the senior staff members. "Escort her off the aircraft," he said. "We'll be conducting a full investigation, and for now, she is suspended." The cabin was silent as Karen, now visibly shaken, was led out of the plane. Passengers exchanged glances, some nodding in quiet approval, others still processing what they had witnessed. James turned back to Olivia. "I want to assure you that this isn't just about addressing today's incident," he said. "We'll be implementing new measures to ensure this doesn't happen again: mandatory bias training, updated hiring practices, and a comprehensive review of our customer service protocols." Olivia's expression softened slightly. "That's a start," she said. "But it needs to be more than just policies. It's about creating a culture of respect and accountability. Every passenger, regardless of their background, should feel valued." James nodded. "You have my full support. This will be a turning point for our airline." As the passengers disembarked, some stopped to thank Olivia for speaking up, their words quiet but sincere. Olivia watched them leave, her resolve stronger than ever. This wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning of a broader fight for change, and Olivia was ready to lead the charge. In the days following the incident, Olivia Turner took immediate action to address the deeper issues exposed during her flight. She knew this wasn't just about Karen. It was about tackling the systemic biases that allowed such behavior to persist. Olivia had built her airline with the vision of inclusivity and respect, and now it was time to reinforce those principles with concrete changes. Her first move was to convene a meeting with senior executives and department heads. The atmosphere in the boardroom was tense, as Olivia stood at the head of the table, her calm yet commanding presence demanding attention. She began by recounting the incident, not as a personal grievance, but as a wake-up call for the entire organization. "This isn't just one person's failure," Olivia said, her voice steady. "It's a reflection of gaps in our training, our hiring practices, and our company culture. If we want to be leaders in this industry, we need to hold ourselves to higher standards, not just in service, but in how we treat people." Her message was clear. This wasn't about blame, but about creating lasting change. Olivia outlined a comprehensive plan, which included mandatory bias and diversity training for all employees, from entry-level staff to top executives. The program would also include workshops on empathy, customer service, and unconscious bias, ensuring every team member understood the impact of their actions. "We can't fix what we don't acknowledge," Olivia continued. "This training isn't just about avoiding incidents like the one I experienced. It's about building a workplace where everyone feels seen, respected, and valued, whether they're employees or customers." The rollout began within weeks, and Olivia personally attended the first training session. Standing at the podium in a packed auditorium, she addressed the crowd with the same grace and conviction that had defined her career. "This is not the end of the journey," she said. "It's just the beginning. Together we can create a future where respect and dignity are not exceptions but the rule. While many employees embraced the initiative, others resisted. Whispers of dissent echoed through some corners of the company, with a handful of staff members labeling the changes as unnecessary or performative. Olivia understood that resistance was inevitable, but she didn't let it deter her. Instead, she leaned into the challenge, encouraging open dialogue and listening to the concerns of those who felt uneasy about the changes. In one particularly tense meeting, a senior manager voiced his skepticism. "Do we really need to overhaul everything for one isolated incident?" he asked, his tone bordering on defensive. Olivia met his gaze without flinching. "This wasn't an isolated incident," she replied firmly. "It was a symptom of a larger issue, one that affects not just our passengers, but the integrity of our brand. If we don't address the root cause, we're not solving the problem, we're ignoring it." Her words resonated, and over time, the resistance began to wane. Employees started sharing their own stories of bias and discrimination, finding strength in the company's renewed commitment to change. Some even came forward with ideas to further improve the workplace culture, from employee resource groups to anonymous feedback channels. Olivia also made it a point to highlight progress along the way. Monthly updates celebrated milestones, such as increased employee satisfaction scores and reduced complaints of bias. These small but significant victories reinforced the importance of the initiative and kept the momentum alive. Beyond the internal changes, Olivia's efforts began to ripple outward. Customers noticed a shift in the airline's service, with many praising the warmth and professionalism of the staff. Olivia received letters from passengers who felt seen and valued for the first time, their words reminding her of the power of even the smallest acts of respect. Through it all, Olivia remained the driving force behind the transformation. Her determination inspired not only her team, but also other companies in the industry, many of which reached out to learn from her example. Olivia wasn't just changing her airline, she was setting a new standard for the entire industry. By the end of the first year, the results were undeniable. Complaints of discrimination had dropped significantly, and employee engagement had soared. Olivia knew there was still work to be done, but she took pride in the strides they had made. This wasn't just about fixing a problem, it was about building a legacy of inclusivity and respect, one step at a time. As Olivia Turner's initiatives began to take root, the ripple effects extended far beyond her airline. The industry took notice of the transformation under her leadership. Competitors marveled at the measurable improvements in customer satisfaction and employee engagement, and trade publications highlighted Olivia's efforts as a model for modern corporate leadership. It wasn't long before her work attracted the attention of a broader audience. One day, Olivia received a call that would change the trajectory of her already illustrious career. A coalition of industry leaders and government regulators had formed a task force aimed at addressing systemic inequities across the aviation industry. They wanted Olivia to lead it. "This is your chance to make an even bigger impact," James Everett said, his voice filled with encouragement when Olivia shared the news. "You've already shown the world what's possible. Now, you can help set a new standard for the entire industry." Olivia took a moment to reflect. She thought about the anonymous letters of gratitude she had received, the employees who had embraced the changes, and the passengers who now felt valued. This was more than just an opportunity. It was a responsibility. "I'll do it," she said finally, her voice firm. "If it means creating real change, I'm in." Her appointment as the head of the task force was met with widespread acclaim. Olivia's first priority was to develop a comprehensive framework for systemic reform, including mandatory inclusivity training across the industry, equitable hiring practices, and clear accountability measures. She also advocated for creating an independent oversight committee to ensure transparency and fairness. Olivia's vision extended beyond policies and programs. At the inaugural meeting of the task force, she delivered a powerful address that resonated with every attendee. "This isn't just about fixing what's broken," Olivia said, her voice steady and impassioned. "It's about building something better. An industry that values every individual, celebrates diversity, and holds itself accountable to the highest standards of respect and equity. We have the chance to create lasting change, and I won't let it slip away." Her leadership was as transformative as it was inspiring. Airlines across the globe began adopting her recommendations, ushering in a new era of inclusivity. Olivia's work became a beacon of progress, not just for aviation, but for industries grappling with their own challenges of equity and representation. As Olivia boarded her final flight as CEO of her airline, en route to Washington, D.C., to begin her new role, she couldn't help but feel a profound sense of purpose. The journey she had begun from a single moment of injustice was now a movement, proving that resilience, determination, and the courage to speak out could create a legacy far greater than any individual. Olivia Turner's journey from a moment of quiet injustice to a global leader in equity and inclusion became a testament to the power of resilience and determination. What started as a single incident on a flight transformed into a movement that redefined an entire industry. Olivia's leadership not only brought systemic reforms to her airline, but inspired companies worldwide to reevaluate their cultures and values. Her legacy was clear. Real change begins with the courage to confront uncomfortable truths and the commitment to act. Through her unwavering resolve, Olivia proved that even the most deeply rooted biases can be challenged, and that one person's voice can create a ripple effect of progress. As the sun set on her role as CEO and rose on her new chapter as an industry leader, Olivia remained steadfast in her purpose. This wasn't the end of her journey. It was only the beginning of a brighter, more inclusive future for all.